It will be good. Good morning, you guys. Today, Dr. Kim and I are going to be discussing what steps to take after an affair. And I know that this topic is a little bit challenging, but Dr. Kim has some great tips and great advice for you guys. So we're just going to jump on in. So, what if I just found out that my spouse had an affair on me? What should I do first?
Yeah, I think it depends on how did you find out? Did your spouse confess to you, or did you just uncover it yourself? And so I think it's a little different what you do if your spouse confesses, and it's going to be a shock. It's going to be hurt either way. But I think when you first find out, if you've uncovered it, you need to confront your spouse if they haven't told you about it yet. So I think that would be your first step. You want to confront. You want to let them know get everything out in the open, so then you can decide what your next steps are. And so. That would be the first thing, is to get it where you can have that conversation with your spouse.
So if he didn't, or he or she, if your spouse did not tell you that they had the affair and you found out yourself, I mean, like, how do you confront somebody about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world, because
No.
usually you can be hurt or angry or
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Most likely the person denies it at first.
Yeah.
It depends on how much hard evidence that you have, although today you can get pretty good evidence with text messages and all those kind of things. But I think it's just, you saying, hey, we need to talk about this. I found this evidence. I know you're having an affair. What? And then you put the ball in their court.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you going to do about this?
Yeah. So if it
You know,
was,
you need to know where they stand.
yeah. And if it was the other way around, where the spouse came to them and they were like, hey, I had an affair, I ended it. What do we do? What do we do then?
Yeah, I think usually my experience has been when someone comes and confesses like that, a lot of times they do want out of the affair, and they do want to heal their marriage. Now they may be confessing it to say, I'm leaving you too. I mean, that's the other side of it. So again, depends on what the circumstances are there. But you need to know, as the victim in the situation, whether your spouse wants to work on it. You got to decide whether you want to work on it or not, before you can even go anywhere there. But you're going to have a ton of emotions. I mean, I can't imagine all the mix of emotions you would have, from anger, sadness, to betrayal. All these things will go through your mind, and you kind of start putting dates together. Well, how long ago is the affair gone? Well, it's gone a year. Well, 6 months ago we were on this great trip, and I thought everything was great. I mean, so all these things go through your mind. So getting it out on the table so you can begin to deal with is an important thing.
Yeah. So if this just happened, do we separate or do we try to stay in the same home?
I think if you're both committed to work on it, and you're willing to both work on it, I think you need to stay together. Because if you separate, you're going to wonder, well, if the person's had an affair, you're going to wonder where they are. If they're home with you, you know where they are at night. And so I think if you're working on it, it takes that element out of what's going on, and so some accountability there. Because if someone's living in an apartment and you're living at home, and you've just found out they had an affair, there's going to be a lot of mistrust there,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
for good reasons.
Yes. And do we stay talking? Like, do we have like just our daily conversation, or do we talk more with a counselor?
I think, obviously, I think you're going to need some help going through it. I don't know the couples that have made it without help in some way. So I think the counselor can give you some guidance. I think it consumes a couple for the first period of time, in that there's going to be so many questions that the person's going to have of whys and everything, because you're trying to make sense out of something that's never going to make sense. I mean, it's never going to make sense why someone stepped outside their marriage and had an affair. But in just the way we're kind of wired, we're trying to put it together where it makes sense at some point. So that's the questions. And I think a counselor can guide you what questions are helpful and what are not helpful. Is it helpful to know every detail of every intimate act they did with that person? Probably not, because especially, well, but either way, you get those things in your mind, and they're hard to get out of your mind. You know the basics of it. Do you need to know all the details? So I encourage people, unless they're just adamant about it, you don't really need to know all those little details.
I think that.
I think there's been but I think you want to begin to talk, and then have a counselor guide you. You eventually you want to be able where you can talk. You got to talk about other things in life too. And so sometimes it's helpful to kind of compartmentalize it and say, hey, we're at this point in this situation, we're going to talk about it every day, but let's talk about it at this time. And so you set aside time specifically to talk about it. Doesn't mean you don't think about the other time, but as far as being able to live your life in some way and also deal with it, that seems to work pretty well.
Hmm. And what if we have kids? Do we discuss this with our children, or do we just kind of keep this to ourselves and just try to deal with it and then maybe discuss it with them later?
I think it depends on the age of the kids. I
Okay.
mean, I think the less they know, the better in general. Older kids seem to figure things out. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had parents that say, they really weren't going to tell the kids. Kids knew something was wrong, and one of the teenagers has come and said, "Is dad having an affair? Is mom having an affair?" Kids are so aware of what goes on today. Where probably 40 years ago, that was the last thing a child would have thought of. Well, mom and dad might just be arguing or something. So I think, and I think you keep it at their level. They don't need to know all the details, and it's easy if you have younger kids to say, your mom and dad are just going through a tough time right now. We're working on some things, and we both love you. And you don't want kids to ever think any of this is their fault, which
Mhm.
sometimes kids do.
So, other than going to a counselor and praying, what are some other steps that we could take?
I think you need one trusted person you can talk to besides your counselor, besides your spouse. I just think you need that other person, and it's someone that that is going to be confident, and not going to share what you share with anybody else. Someone that you also know has the same values that you do. If you've chosen to work on your marriage, that they believe in that, and they're going to encourage you in working on your marriage, and someone who's going to be objective with you. So I think that's important. And I think journaling through the process really helps because you will make progress. Sometimes you don't feel like you are. And so when you journal just a few things every day, that your thoughts, you're feeling, what you're going through, when you look back in a month, you can see, yeah, we have made some progress, or we are making progress. So I think that's really helpful. But really, counseling, prayer, uh, following a counselor's advice is how you interact with your spouse, and the things you talk about to begin to bring healing. All of those things go together, and it's tough. It is not easy. It is not a quick fix deal. It is, I tell couples, you count on at least a year of going through just a lot of struggles. That doesn't mean you're not going to make progress, but
Yeah.
there's just a lot to go through and a lot of emotions, and it depends a lot on what the affair was like. Was it an emotional affair too? Was it a one night stand? Was it someone that there was no emotional attachment? Did it go on for a week, a year, 2 years, 5 years? All of those things are going to play into it as to how long it takes to recover and to get over some of those things and to begin to build trust again.
Yeah. So, just kind of going off what you just said, do you think, I know it depends on the affair, but do you think that trust ever fully comes back? Do you think it's ever really restored?
I think so, and that's just in talking to people, since we haven't been through it. I know you haven't been through that. That people, and Cindy Bill, who's a good friend, and Cindy's done a lot of stuff with us, and she's been very open, and we use her books a lot because of the really what happened in their marriage. And I think she said, I asked her kind of the same thing. It's the trust there, and this was 10 years after all this stuff had gone on. And she said, I don't know that I ever completely trust him, but I trust Christ in him. And as long as I see Christ in him every day, I trust that.
That's
And
good.
that was my paraphrase. But basically is, and then she trusts him today. And I think it is. It's like, I trust you today. I think what I tell people, if you really see that they've opened their heart to Jesus and you see Jesus working in their lives, then I think you can trust that, because Christ isn't going to lead them to do anything that's not good for your marriage.
Yeah, that's so good. So, what if my spouse doesn't immediately terminate communication with the person that they had the affair with? What do I do?
It's an absolute. I mean, you've got to terminate everything, and just, I've had people have to quit jobs. And you got to
Wow.
decide, how important is your marriage to you.
Yeah.
One of the if couples are listening, or someone's in this situation, one of our podcasts with Amber and Arlie Smart, and you can just go to awesomemarriage.com and put in Amber and Arlie, and you'll get that up, or you can find it on iTunes. Their story there was about as bad as it can get, with multiple affairs. The line she had to draw, and it was, okay, you're not cutting this off, so you're out.
Yeah.
And then what he did to get back, and now they have an incredible marriage, and they minister to other people who've been through that. So I think you've got to cut it off with that other person,
Yeah.
and there's no way you can be in two relationships at the same time.
There's
Now, what's hard is the person, if you've been in an emotional relationship and you've allowed someone else to meet those needs your spouse is supposed to meet, you got to let go of that and trust that that can be built in your marriage, which it can be. But sometimes people don't want to let it go of that, because feels good, and they've gone there to get needs met, not only sexual but emotionally, that should have been turned into marriage. And anytime you're having trouble in your marriage, that's why I tell couples, turn into your marriage, not out of it. Go to your spouse and say, we're struggling, we're having time, I'm having a hard time, I'm feeling tempted, we got to get some help.
Yeah.
And don't take that step out of your marriage.
Yeah, that's so good. So what if my spouse doesn't want to go to counseling with me to get the help? What do I do?
I would go by yourself. I
Okay.
think if you're going to benefit anyway, and the counselor can give you, and if your spouse doesn't want to go with you, they probably aren't all in on trying to get this to work anyway. And so you're going to need some counsel on what your next steps are, how to handle things. When do what do you need to do to take care of yourself, take care of your family, your kids, those kind of things. And so a counselor can really help you do that and help you in the healing process, because it's different. It's hard if your spouse says they want to make it work, because then you've got a lot of things to work through and build the trust. And if your spouse says, I don't want to make it work, or they're not working on it, then you've got to realize, okay, I've got to shut that chapter of my life and move on. And how do I do that? And so a good counselor can help you work through those things.
And I know that this is very controversial and we've discussed it multiple times, but is it okay to get divorced if your spouse had an affair on you and they are just not trying to work on the marriage? They don't really want anything to do with you anymore. They're just done.
Yeah, I think my understanding of scripture is unrepentant adultery is a reason for divorce. If someone says, I want to make it work, and they're consciously, not just everything's lining up, they're saying it, they're doing it, all those kind of things, they're working on it, then I think you stay in and you make it work. I think that's pretty clear of what the Bible says. But if they're out, then you haven't helped.
Okay. Well, this is just one more question. I know that you mentioned Amber and Arlie and one other person, but do you know other couples who have gone through an affair and who made it out on top, who are still
Yes.
married, who are still happy, and they have a great marriage?
Yes, I've had a number of couples make it through it. I've had couples that haven't made it through it, but yes, you can. And what I see in the couples that make it through, they're willing to go through some really hard times. It's painful. The husband's the one who's gone out, he has to be willing to do whatever it takes to make his wife feel safe and secure anymore. Someone asked Chris Beal one time, Chris was telling me about so how long are you going to keep letting her know where you are all the time? How long do you keep doing this and that? And Chris said, I'm going to do it the rest of my life. I don't want her to ever doubt again. And so I think if you're asking, how long do I have to keep being accountable? You're asking the wrong question. Yeah. The question is, how do I continue to make my spouse feel safe and secure and build trust? And you do that every day, the rest of your life. And it becomes a habit. It's not like and if it's a burden to you, then that's a problem. You need to figure that out. It should be something I have an opportunity to build that back and to show my spouse how much I love her or him, and how much I want to be a part of this relationship. And I'm willing to go and do whatever it takes to make this work.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's unfortunately all the time that we have for today. But if you guys have gone through this, or you are currently going through this and you need some advice, please feel free to send us a message. Dr. Kim would be happy to answer it for you. And we hope that you guys have a great day. Just since August is somehow already over, if you guys haven't already checked out the Family Prayer Challenge, you can go to awesomemarriage.com/family-prayer-challenge, and you can get this resource with any donation. It's a great resource, and we love it. We're having so much fun doing it. So I highly recommend it. But we hope that you guys have a good day, and we'll see you again next week.
See you guys next week.